My name is Ruby, and I was the unexpected third child, born 12 years after my eldest sister, Sarah, and 10 years after Emma. By the time I started forming my earliest memories, they were already immersed in the whirlwind of their teenage years, boys' makeup and high school drama, far too busy to notice their baby sister. Our suburban Minnesota home echoed with the pride my parents felt for their golden daughters. Dinner conversations were always about Sarah's straight A's or Emma's triumphs as a cheerleader. Meanwhile, I sat quietly, pushing peas around my plate, feeling like a shadow cast by their brilliance. I vividly recall the day Sarah introduced her first boyfriend to the family. I was just 4 years old, peeking to the banister as his tall, awkward boy with spiky hair nervously shook hands with Dad. Not long after, Emma followed suit, starting the date at 15. Both sisters were beautiful and confident, embodying everything I wasn't yet. "Ruby, finish your homework," Mom would say, barely glancing my way while helping Sarah pick out prom dresses or discussing college plans with Emma. I quickly learned to be self-sufficient, carving out my own space and burying my desire for attention beneath layers of independence. When I was 7, the family erupted in joy one morning over Sarah's acceptance to Northwestern. Mom made celebratory pancakes, and I sat in my usual spot, invisible as ever. 2 years later, Emma left for college, leaving me alone in a house that now felt cavernous and suffocating all at once. Their rooms became shrines, filled with trophies, photos, and untouched memories, while I tried to navigate my adolescence unnoticed. Everything began to shift when I was 15. By then, Sarah was married and living nearby. Her first child, Tyler, was born, and I remember the day she brought him home. Everyone cooed and cried with joy, and Mom squeezed my shoulder, saying, "You'll be such a wonderful aunt." At the time, I was genuinely excited to have a nephew. Tyler was adorable, and I loved making him laugh with silly faces while Sarah and Mom sipped coffee. But that excitement quickly turned into obligation. One Saturday morning, Sarah handed me Tyler with a rush. "Could you watch him for a couple of hours? I need to go shopping." Before I could respond, she was out the door. That couple of hours turned into a pattern. Every weekend, Sarah would drop Tyler off at our parents' house and vanish for hours, claiming she needed a break. "It's not fair," I complained to Mom one day after Sarah had been gone for 5 hours. I had plans with Jenny at the mall. "Family helps family, Ruby," Mom replied dismissively. "Your sister needs this time. You'll understand when you're a mother." At 16, Emma announced her pregnancy with a squeal of delight at the dinner table. Everyone cheered, while I felt a pit form in my stomach. When her daughter Sophie was born, my weekends became a juggling act of managing a rambunctious toddler and a crying infant. Homework, that became a luxury reserved for the rare moments when both kids napped at the same time. One Saturday, while bouncing Sophie on my hip and watching Tyler color on the coffee table, I mentioned to Dad that Jason had asked me to the movies. "You should have thought about that before agreeing to watch the kids," he said flatly. I never agreed. I shot back, frustration spilling out. Sophie started wailing, and Mom appeared in the doorway, scolding me. "Lower your voice. You're upsetting the baby. Stop being so selfish." Determined to escape, I poured all my energy into school. I spent hours in the library, researching faraway colleges, knowing good grades were my ticket out. When I received my acceptance letter to Berkeley, complete with a partial scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. But my family had other ideas. They convened what they called a family council, urging me to consider the local community college. "You can live at home, save money, and help with the kids," Emma said brightly, as if that was a selling point. The room fell silent as Grandma Rose, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, spoke up. "I think Berkeley is perfect for Ruby," she said firmly. "That program is exactly what she needs for her future, and your grandfather's education fund will cover what the scholarship doesn't." The tension shattered like glass. Everyone stared at Grandma in disbelief. but I could have hugged her. For the first time in years, I felt seen. The family council ended with disappointed glances cast in my direction, but I didn't care. For the first time, I could see a future that didn't involve being everyone's free babysitter. Berkeley wasn't just a school. It was my freedom. And for once, I was determined to claim it. The Christmas, I took back my holiday. College was everything I had dreamed of and more. My dorm room became my sanctuary. My classmates transformed into genuine friends, and for the first time in years, my weekends were truly my own. Gone were the days of crying babies and sticky-fingered toddlers. This was a world of freedom, filled with my choices and my pace. But no matter how far I tried to run, family obligations had a way of catching up, especially during the holidays. Thanksgiving and Christmas were non-negotiable. My mom would call weeks in advance, her voice thick with anticipation. "Everyone's asking about you, Ruby," she'd say. The kids miss their favorite aunt. The first Christmas break after I started college, I walked back into a whirlwind of chaos. Sarah now had 2 boys, rambunctious Tyler and his baby brother Luke. Emma had added a mischievous little boy, Max, to her family alongside Sophie. And as if that weren't enough, Janet greeted me the moment I walked through the door with her twin 5-year-olds in tow. "They've been asking about you all week," she lied, pushing them toward me. The truth was glaring. These kids barely knew who I was, yet the adults were determined to offload their parenting duties the moment I arrived. Before I could protest, Rachel's 7-year-old daughter clung to my leg, followed closely by Mike's 9-year-old son and 6-year-old daughter. "Ruby, sweetheart," Mom called from the kitchen, barely visible behind a mountain of dishes. "Why don't you take the kids upstairs to your room? I'll bring up some snacks later." And just like that, I found myself shepherding a small army of children up the stairs, feeling more like a harried sheepdog than a college student home for the holidays. My childhood bedroom quickly devolved into a war zone. Juice spills on my once pristine bedspread, toys scattered across the floor, and crayon marks mysteriously appearing on the walls. The hours crawled by, punctuated by the occasional tantrum or sibling squabble. The smells of roasted turkey and cinnamon wafted up from downstairs, making my stomach ache with hunger. But there I stayed, keeping the chaos contained while the adults downstairs enjoyed a peaceful holiday feast. When Mom finally appeared with a tray of snacks, carrot sticks and cheese cubes, she barely made eye contact. By the time the last child was collected and I tiptoed downstairs, the dining room was empty. Dirty dishes and picked-over platters were the only evidence of the meal I hadn't been invited to. "Ruby, be a dear and help with the dishes," Mom called from the kitchen, as if I hadn't just spent the entire day running a free babysitting service. Not one thank you. Not one inquiry about whether I'd eaten. The adults simply filed out, chatting about New Year's plans and bedtime routines, leaving me standing alone in the wreckage of Christmas dinner. The breaking point came during finals week the following year. Mom's cheerful holiday text landed, just as I was wrapping up my last paper. "Sarah and Emma are coming with the kids, plus Janet's twins, Rachel's girls, Mike's kids, and exciting news. Sarah's sister-in-law Lisa is bringing her 3. It's going to be such a wonderful Christmas." I did the math. 12 kids. 12. My stomach churned as I stared at the message, the words blurring before my eyes. For 2 years, I had watched my college friends return from holiday breaks with stories of real family bonding, movie nights, board games, and proper meals. My own holiday memories were a blur of babysitting and exhaustion. Something inside me snapped. This time, I packed my bag with an uncharacteristic sense of calm. I wasn't dreading the holidays anymore, because I was going home with a plan. The days leading up to Christmas were deceptively normal. I helped Mom in the kitchen, inhaling the familiar aromas of her honey-glazed ham and famous apple pie. I hung ornaments on the tree, carefully placing my handmade ones from childhood beside the fancy glass baubles Mom reserved for the front. Christmas morning arrived in its usual frenzy. Cars filled the driveway, each unloading more children and more chaos. Sarah arrived first with Tyler and Luke, followed by Emma with Sophie and Max. Lisa showed up with her 3 under 7. By the time Rachel and Mike joined, the house was a cacophony of shrieks, giggles, and cries. I watched the scene from a corner of the living room, the noise washing over me like a wave. Sarah spotted me and made a beeline, her youngest perched on her hip. "Ruby," she called, her voice tinged with that all-too-familiar tone. "The boys have been so excited to see you. They can't wait to play with their favorite aunt." She was already nudging them in my direction, expecting me to take over as I always had. But this time, something shifted. I stood my ground and met her gaze with unflinching resolve. "No," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "I'm not watching the kids today. I'm here to enjoy Christmas like everyone else." The room didn't fall silent. It was far too chaotic for that, but the adults nearby froze. Sarah's mouth hung open in shock. Mom stood in the doorway, a plate of cookies in hand, staring as though I'd just announced I was canceling Christmas. For the first time, I didn't care. I wasn't going to spend another holiday as the unpaid nanny. This year, Christmas was mine. Cookie's dad looked up from his newspaper, his brows lifting in mild curiosity. "But who's going to watch all the kids?" he asked, his voice calm amidst the growing chaos. Emma's panicked voice rang out, sharp and fraught, cutting across the living room. "What are we supposed to do now?" she demanded, her eyes darting toward Mom. Mom simply shrugged, helpless, her expression a perfect mirror of everyone else's bewilderment. Their collective disbelief was almost enough to make me laugh. They looked like someone had just informed them that Christmas itself had been unceremoniously canceled. I turned toward the stairs, throwing one last glance over my shoulder. The chaos behind me, voices rising, children whining, and the clatter of objects being hastily moved, felt like distant noise as I climbed to the familiar refuge of my childhood bedroom. Each step felt like crossing into a new realm, one where I could finally breathe freely. The soft click of the door closing was satisfying, a definitive punctuation mark on years of unspoken resentment. I flopped onto my bed, still the same twin-sized relic of my middle school years, and exhaled a long, cathartic breath. From below, the muffled cacophony continued. Adult voices clashing, the occasional cry of a distressed child, and the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. Snippets of outraged conversation drifted upward through the floorboards. "Can you believe her? So selfish. In my day, we knew better." I couldn't suppress a smile. Let them talk. Let them finally face the reality of parenting their own children. My phone buzzed in my hand, and a message from Kate appeared on the screen. "Did you do it? Did you finally stand up to them?" "Operation Freedom is in progress," I typed back. Curly hiding in my room while they figure out how to manage their own kids. A knock on the door interrupted my quiet rebellion. "Ruby?" Mom's voice, trying for gentleness, but landing somewhere between strained and desperate. "The children are asking for you." I didn't bother moving. "I'm busy, Mom," I called back, my tone even. Her sigh was audible, heavy with resignation, and the sound of her retreating footsteps felt like a small victory. I returned to my phone, diving into a group chat filled with my college friends. Their own holiday dramas unfolded in real time, providing a comforting background to my peaceful rebellion. Jessica's uncle was predictably drunk. Kate's brother had shown up with a surprise girlfriend, and Mike's grandma was once again asking why he wasn't married yet. 2 blissful hours passed this way, my friends' messages of solidarity and humor keeping me company. Meanwhile, the chaos downstairs morphed into a quieter, more subdued rhythm, one that, for once, didn't require my participation. When I finally descended for dinner, the room fell into a stunned silence. Every pair of eyes turned to me, their disbelief palpable. Aunt Janet actually dropped her fork. Cousin Rachel's mouth hung open mid-sentence. Through the living room doorway, I could see Emma attempting to wrangle the children into some semblance of order. Her perfect holiday ensemble was now disheveled, her hair slipping free from its elegant updo, and her sweater bore multiple stains of questionable origin. For the first time in years, I took a seat at the adult table. The novelty of the experience wasn't lost on me. The spread before me was pristine: honey-glazed ham, sweet potato casserole, and a medley of side dishes that had yet to be picked over by tiny, sticky hands. I savored every bite, relishing food that was still warm and fresh, a rarity in past holidays. The room, however, was thick with tension. The clinking of silverware against porcelain couldn't quite mask the unspoken judgments swirling around me. It was Sarah who finally broke the uneasy quiet, her voice sharp with sarcasm. "Well," she announced to no one in particular, "looks like someone's gotten too big for their boots at college. Forgotten all about sisterly duties, have we?" I swallowed my bite of mashed potatoes, deliberately slow, letting her words hang in the air. "Funny thing about sisterly duties," I replied calmly, setting down my fork. "I don't remember seeing free babysitter in any sisterhood manual. Maybe you could point out that chapter, right after the one where parents are supposed to watch their own children." The gasps around the table were genuine, theatrical even. Aunt Janet clutched her pearls, a gesture so cliché it was almost laughable. Cousin Rachel suddenly found her green beans fascinating, while Uncle Mike focused on his dinner roll, like it might hold the answer to the universe's mysteries. Mom and Dad exchanged a look, a mix of disappointment and unwillingness to cause a scene. Dad's fork hung in midair, and Mom's polite smile tightened, but neither of them said a word. Conversation resumed, haltingly at first, as though the room was collectively recalibrating itself. By the time Emma reappeared in the doorway, she looked like she'd been through a war. Her sweater bore additional stains, and her hair was a complete disaster. "Sarah," she called, her voice tinged with desperation. "Could you?" But Sarah avoided Emma's gaze, staring resolutely at her plate. I continued eating, savoring every bite of a meal I didn't have to earn with childcare. Finally, it seemed, the mantle of responsibility had been passed, and I wasn't planning to take it back. Sarah shot me one last, withering glare before shoving her chair back from the table. The sisters exchanged places, with Emma practically collapsing into the vacated seat. She looked utterly drained, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion that mirrored my own feelings every holiday season for years. Emma filled her plate mechanically, her motions robotic, but she couldn't resist darting icy glances my way between bites. I met her gaze briefly, shrugged, and returned to savoring my meal. This time, I allowed myself the rare luxury of a second slice of Mom's apple pie, a treat I had never been able to fully enjoy before. After polishing off my dessert, I excused myself from the table quietly. No one protested. No one asked me to help with cleanup. No one shoved a child into my arms and demanded I take over babysitting duty. For once, I felt like I had truly celebrated Christmas. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the living room windows as I descended the stairs, still riding the high of a peaceful holiday evening. That bliss evaporated the moment I saw them, Mom, Dad, Sarah, and Emma, all seated in the living room, their expressions grim. It was an ambush, plain and simple. Sarah wasted no time. "What kind of performance was that yesterday?" she snapped, her voice as sharp as broken glass. "You made us look like bad parents in front of everyone." I sank into an armchair, oddly calm despite the accusation. "Performance?" I asked, arching a brow. "You mean me wanting to enjoy Christmas like everyone else? I'm just tired of being the unpaid, unappreciated babysitter while the rest of you get to relax." Mom interjected, her brow furrowed in confusion. "But you never complained before." I laughed, a sharp, humorless sound. "Never complained? Mom, I've been complaining for years. You just chose to ignore me because it was easier to exploit the good little sister who never made waves." Their voices erupted in a chaotic symphony of accusations and guilt trips. Dad brought up everything they had done for me over the years. Mom touted how well they had raised me, Sarah and Emma took turns lobbing barbs about sisterly duty and family obligation. I let them exhaust themselves before speaking again, my voice steady but firm. They're not my children. I didn't give birth to them. I didn't choose to have them. They're your responsibility, not mine, especially during the holidays. When I deserve to relax too, that's when Sarah stood, her face flushed with fury, and unleashed what she thought was her trump card. Well, maybe it's time someone taught you a lesson about gratitude. Let's see how you manage without Mom and Dad paying your college tuition. The room fell silent. Mom and Dad exchanged uneasy glances, clearly caught off guard by her suggestion. But instead of the panic Sarah clearly expected, I felt an overwhelming sense of relief. Finally, all the cards were on the table. I stood slowly, meeting her glare head-on. Actually, Sarah, Grandma's been paying my tuition from Grandpa's education fund. You know, the one he set up for all his granddaughters. The same fund that helped you through nursing school and Emma through business school. And even if that wasn't the case, I have a partial scholarship. Unlike some people, I'm not afraid of working to support myself. Without waiting for their response, I turned and walked upstairs. Packing took less than 10 minutes. I'd grown adept at traveling light over the years. When I came back down, Mom and Dad called after me, their voices a mix of anger and desperation. But I was done. The door closed behind me, shutting out their protests. The winter air stung my cheeks as I walked to my car, but I barely noticed. The drive back to campus was serene, the miles stretching between me and home like a balm. Once in my dorm room, I unblocked their numbers one by one: Mom, Dad, Sarah, Emma. Each tap on my phone felt like severing a chain I hadn't realized was holding me down. In the months that followed, I rediscovered myself. January was filled with new classes and quiet weekends. February brought snow and a blissful absence of family drama. I threw myself into my studies, spent time with friends, and for the first time in years, felt like I was living for myself, not for someone else's expectations. Then one cold Saturday morning in late February, I looked out my dorm window and saw the Mom, Dad, and Emma standing uncertainly in the parking lot. Their postures were hesitant, almost apologetic. Something about their vulnerability gave me pause. I met them in the lobby, where Emma spoke first. "Can we buy you a coffee? We'd like to talk." We found a quiet corner in the campus cafe, the steam from our cups curling into the air between us. Mom broke the silence first, her voice tinged with regret. "We've been doing a lot of thinking," she said. "After you left, well, we had some long conversations." "Very long conversations," Emma added, her eyes meeting mine directly. "Ruby," she said softly, "we were wrong. All of us. We took advantage of you for years and called it family duty to make ourselves feel better." Dad cleared his throat. "We didn't realize, or maybe we didn't want to realize, how unfair it was. You deserved your own holidays, your own life." I listened, letting their words sink in. "And Sarah?" I asked. Emma sighed. "She's still processing. You know how she is. She has trouble admitting when she's wrong. But the rest of us, we want to do better." Mom reached across the table, her eyes pleading. "No more pushing the kids on you. No more taking you for granted. We want you to come home because you want to, not because we need a babysitter." I studied their faces, saw the sincerity in Mom's eyes, the regret in Dad's, and the earnestness in Emma's. "Okay," I said finally, "I believe you." That night, I unblocked their numbers. Within minutes, Emma sent a text. "Miss you, little sis." For real this time. The months that followed brought a new normal. Family visits were no longer laden with obligations. Emma watched her own kids, or she hired help. Mom stopped orchestrating forced bonding sessions. Sarah and I still haven't spoken, but I'm at peace with the distance. Some wounds take time to heal, and I'm finally giving myself the space I deserve.